All right, we are going live. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Camden, Maine today. Beautiful fall day, and we're up here having a great time with the grandkids and that sort of thing. There's a lot going on, though, in overseas and also in the United States. On today's Hot Zone, we're going to talk about law enforcement under attack, not from criminals flooding across the border anymore, but from the politicians trying to stop them from returning those criminals back south to where they came from. Sanctuary cities are absolutely panicking as ICE raids ramp up, and local leaders are declaring state of emergency in Los Angeles to try to stop the very agents that are enforcing federal law for Americans. We're going to talk about the costs to Americans, to people in Chicago and Los Angeles, of these politicians' opposition to legal ICE raids that are happening all around the country. And we're going to talk about how the people that are sworn to protect America are being turned into villains. But before we dig into that, let's talk about protecting your savings. At the start of this year, gold was trading about $2,600 an ounce. Today it's past $4,000 an ounce. And so that's not a bubble. It's a signal for you that inflation, global debt, economic instability are hammering the value of paper assets. But, you know, gold has held its value through every crisis in recorded history. Wealth is physical. Gold is something you can own that's real, and wealth that you can hold in your hand. You can even roll your existing 401k or IRA into a gold IRA with preserve gold, and that gives you security no politician or bank can tamper with. So if you go to preservegold.com/Chuck or text the word Chuck to 50505 today, you can take a stand for your future. So I highly recommend you do that. And in the meantime, again, if you had listened and moved some of your assets into gold, when I first started talking about this, you'd already be up more than 25% on your money this year. And we believe that, I believe gold is going to continue to rise just because gold climbs a wall of worry. So again, go to preservegold.com/Chuck or go text the word Chuck to 50505. And so you see there, it looks like our moderators are putting the link in the description. And so check that out. Thank you to our moderators and to Preserve Gold for sponsoring today's broadcast. Now, we're going to talk about the state of emergency that the Los Angeles government has declared because of federal law enforcement activities happening in their cities. Now, this is a little out of the ordinary. Typically, you would want federal law enforcement to be enforcing the law. You would not want, to pass an ordinance to try to limit the federal government from doing their job. And if you don't like the way the federal government is doing its job, then the best thing you could do would be to get Congress to change the law and not just expect the federal government to ignore the law. But see, that's what these politicians have gotten used to over the last 4 years under Joe Biden. They just ignored the laws that they didn't like, and the Biden administration didn't bother to enforce any of them. So in California, for example, Gavin Newsom, they've passed a law called SB 627, which is called the No Secret Police Act, and that bans most law enforcement, including federal agents that are operating in California, from wearing face masks or concealing their identities during their operations. Los Angeles County has voted to draft an ordinance that bans law enforcement from wearing masks while on duty, and local California bills require officers to show their face and visible identification. But here's the catch. This mask ban for federal agents is legally untested. and it's vulnerable to challenge in the courts under the Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause says that the state or local governments cannot pass laws that contradict federal laws across the country. So courts might block the enforcement of the ordinance that they've passed on federal agents. And if I were President Trump, if I were Kristi Noem, I would instruct my agents to continue to cover their faces and just let California government take it to court, because I don't think they can adjudicate that. It's very difficult for the cities and states to pass laws that ban normal people from wearing a mask, and so they shouldn't be able to do it for law enforcement either. Mask bans also include carve-outs for undercover work, medical necessity, and tactical units. So that'd be easy to get around. All President Trump has to do is just say all federal agents must wear a gas mask while on duty in case they have to use tear gas or something like that. And that would get around this law. Now, I want to show you some of these videos of what we're seeing in Chicago, especially this one, which is part of a ABC news report about a incident that happened in Chicago, and it got really out of hand. So check this out.
Agents crashing into the SUV, they say, to try to stop it. Two people then fleeing on foot, both eventually arrested. A crowd at the scene growing hostile, throwing eggs and rocks, agents firing tear gas. That confrontation highlighting increased tensions.
I want to show you that right there, because look at this agent gets hit right in the face. Matter of fact, I'm going to make it full screen so you can see it better.
Then fleeing on foot, both eventually arrested.
Watch this.
A crowd at the scene growing hostile, throwing eggs and rocks.
That guy got hit right in the head with
tear gas. That confrontation highlighting increased tensions. Homeland.
So let's add me back in there. This is what agents are having to face. They performed a pit maneuver on a fleeing felon, illegal alien, who had already hit a Border Patrol vehicle, was obviously a danger to the community, driving at very high rates of speed through a residential area. And so they performed a pit maneuver, which is to hit the vehicle just in the back wheel and spin it around. It was textbook. It worked perfectly. It sent the offending vehicle into a tailspin, and then they had to jump out and run for it. They were eventually captured. This is what you want to see law enforcement doing, taking bad people off the streets who would, I mean, imagine if you lived in that neighborhood and your kid's out riding his bike and this guy's driving by at 100 miles an hour. Some people would say, well, but if the law enforcement didn't chase him, then he wouldn't have to run away at 100 miles an hour. Well, if law enforcement didn't bother to enforce the laws, then our cities would be overrun by criminals. This is what law enforcement is supposed to do. And these sanctuary cities are absolutely losing their minds over this. They're just, they can't take this. So I went back because if you remember, during the Biden administration, when the borders were wide open and allowed anybody in, and there were tens of thousands of people coming across the border every month, basically about a city's worth every single month. I mean, like a good-sized city, a couple 100,000 people every month coming across the border. And of course, the border is Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Many of them were coming into Texas. That's a big burden on the state. So Texas was doing what it had to do and was saying, all right, well, these cities up in the north, these quote unquote sanctuary cities, New York, Chicago, Martha's Vineyard, or they're all calling themselves sanctuary cities. Well, if that's the case, then let's call them on this and tell them, all right, we're going to bus these migrants up to your cities. So when they did that, these cities were not very happy. Do you recall? Do you remember when that happened? I mean, it was insane to hear these cities all of a sudden start complaining about the migrants that were coming into their cities when they had already been welcoming the cities in. I mean, like, I was in Latin America during that time, reporting on the caravans that were coming up through Guatemala into Mexico and walking up to the United States. And I pointed this out at the time. There were literal infomercials playing on television down there, put out by CNN. So CNN pretended that this was a report, but really what it was an infomercial. And the name of the infomercial was Migrants. Here is a list of cities in America that will welcome you with open arms. And it listed sanctuary cities across America. And then it went on to say, the best way to get to these cities is by going here and doing this and taking, et cetera, et cetera. Essentially informing them on television, this is CNN in Spanish, on how to get to the U.S. illegally, how to make it across the border safely, and what cities you should go to not get in trouble. And when Chicago started receiving busloads of migrants from Texas, all of a sudden they were really upset about that. And now the mayor of Chicago is saying, we don't have a problem here. There's no problem here. We love all our migrants. They're fine. Well, you know what? I did a little digging and I found out that Chicago currently spends around $600 to $650 million a year to house and care for illegal migrants. That's based on city and state data updated through October of this month, October 2025. As of February, they had already spent $638 million since late 2022 on migrant care. In 2024 alone, spending was at least $185 million for the first half of the year and $138 million for 2023. And so that shows that it's rapidly increasing. They're spending more than $1.4 million a day housing nearly 15,000 migrants. That was from late 2023. And those numbers are massive. Imagine being a taxpayer in Chicago and realizing that you have to pay for all of these illegals who are here staying in shelters to the tune of $1.4 million a day. This is insane, absolutely nuts. Now, people that are here illegally do not obviously want to leave. They came here because they wanted the American dream. They wanted to live the lifestyle. It's like winning the lottery for them. I mean, I went to cities in Guatemala during the Biden administration that were all but ghost towns because everyone in those towns in northern Guatemala had left to go work in the United States. The only people that were in those towns were people who had been deported from the U.S. and were just waiting for their chance to go back in, or the wives and children of men who had gone north and left their families behind. See, the Biden administration talked a lot about family separation and how bad it was under the Trump administration, that Trump was separating families by arresting these illegal migrants. and putting kids in cages and all that. Well, that all started under the Obama administration. It was less under the first Trump administration, and it continued under the Biden administration. But the true family separation is not taking a criminal off the, I mean, every time that you arrest a criminal for any reason, a murderer, a rapist, a DUI, whatever, you put him in jail, you're taking that person away from his family. That's just sort of comes with the territory. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So it's not out of the ordinary. It's not strange. It's not even cruel, really, to remove somebody from their family if they are a felon and they're a danger to society. If they're a danger to society, they're likely a danger to their own family as well. So that's not family separation. Family separation is throwing open the floodgates in the United States and, oh, by the way, making it easier for you to get in if you happen to have a kid with you, or if you're a single mother or a pregnant lady or something like that. Because that just encourages more people to bring one of their kids, leave the rest of their kids behind, leave the wife behind, and come up to the United States. We saw that happen over and over and over again. So when I went into these towns in Guatemala, I met the wives and children of these guys, and they were living in squalor because here's what happens. The guy goes to the United States, he crosses into the U.S., he gets a job, and he's waiting on his asylum hearing. They know what to say when they get to the U.S. They get coached on that by international organizations like the IOM, International Organization for Migration. They get coached on what to say when they get into the country. And so they say just the right things, and they get a court date for an actual asylum hearing. Because there were millions of people in line for asylum hearings, and at the time there were only about 400 asylum judges to hear those cases, their court date was likely 3-4 years in the future. The problem that presented is that if they leave the United States in that time before their hearing, then they don't get to have the hearing for asylum. They can't come back. If they come back in, they have to get a new appointment date. And so they're not allowed to leave and go visit their families. So I met a lot of migrants from not just Latin America, but all over the world, who were coming into the United States, and they couldn't leave. So they didn't see their families for years. Well, if you're a military-age male and you come to the U.S. and you're lonely, away from your family, you got nothing to do for years, well, you can imagine what eventually happens is that these guys end up with a girlfriend, and their girlfriend gets pregnant. Now they've got another family in the United States, and they have more immediate needs because they're here in the U.S. with you. So you stop sending as much money to your family in Guatemala. And I talked to many of these women in these towns in Guatemala that said, yeah, for the first year, we got money every month from my husband. He went up to the U.S., but we haven't heard from him now in 6-8 months, and he stopped sending money. We don't know what happened to him. Well, typically what happened to him is that he got another family, and he's just stopped supporting his family down south. That is how, that is the true family separation. So it's not loving, it's not compassionate to throw the doors open and allow people to come in illegally. I think that people should be able to migrate if they want to. People should be able to live where they want to live, but there should be a legal pathway for them to do that. When I decided to relocate to Panama, I did so for many reasons, but mostly it was patriotic reasons, believe it or not, because I just realized that my tax dollars were funding a behemoth in federal government that was doing things with my money that I didn't like. And so it was a way that I could legally not pay as much money in taxes to support that monster and sort of starve the beast, right? So when I decided to relocate to Panama about 15 years ago, we didn't just go to Panama and just move in and live there. illegally, we went and we did the legal process to get our not citizenship, but residency, permanent residency in Panama. I'm still an American citizen. I still pay taxes in America. I just don't pay quite as much in taxes. That is a way that I feel like I can strike a blow against government waste and overreach, because taxation is theft. So, Dylan says, see if I can put that. Would you consider moving back to America now that things have changed for the better? No, because from a tax standpoint, they have not changed for the better. And while I am certainly happier with the government now than I was under the Obama administration, you know, I enjoy having a place that's outside of the United States. So I've moved a good portion of my life, my wealth, my dogs live there, etc., into a very safe, tranquil, peaceful place in Panama, and I like it. I like having that peace and security. Now, I can still come back to the United States, and I do. I'm in the U.S. now. I spend just under a month in the States every year for pleasurable purposes rather than just for work. I can come back for work other times, and much of the time that I spend in the United States is for work. But the bottom line is, that I sought a legal remedy for the things that I was fleeing in the U.S. And there should be a legal way for people to emigrate to the United States. And indeed there is, but it's not very easy. It's not very friendly. And it's, of course, has to be pretty choosy, because if not, everybody in the world would want to move to the United States. And they would just collapse the system. So the bottom line is, these sanctuary cities are spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year of your tax dollars to pay for illegal immigrants, for programs for illegal immigrants. Now, Los Angeles has declared a state of emergency, and what that allows them to do is not call up the National Guard to fight the ICE agents or anything like that. What that allows them to do is it frees up funds in the budget for them to give to people that they feel are being affected by these raids. Well, who are those people? They're illegal migrants. So what Los Angeles just did by declaring a state of emergency is allocate more taxpayer dollars to give to illegal migrants in their state to try to keep them there. And you might say, like, why in the world would any state or country want to throw open doors and allow millions of illegal migrants into their country? A lot of people say, well, it's so that they can do the jobs that Americans won't do. But I don't think that's as much the case. I think Americans would do all the jobs in America, even the dirty jobs, even the hard jobs. But it would just cost a little more for everybody. And that is the free market at work, and that's fine. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that's the reason. I think there's two main reasons why the Democrats want more people in their cities. Number one is the apportionment issue. Every 10 years when we take a census in America, they don't count the number of citizens, they count the number of bodies, just the number of souls that are present in your state. And they allocate the 435 members of the U.S. Congress based on the number of people, not the number of citizens. So it's been shown that the Democrats picked up maybe 8 seats in the last apportionment, where they reapportioned the delegates. 2 Democrat-run cities, so they picked up 8 extra seats in Congress because they got allocated those. Now, they still have to be voted on, and those states could theoretically vote in a Republican. Sometimes they do, but most of the time, those sanctuary cities are hard left Democratic cities, and so any congressman that's apportioned to them is likely going to go Democrat. So it's a way that they can pick up more Democratic votes. And it's an underhanded way. People say that, well, illegal immigrants can't vote in elections in America, and that's true. Legally, they cannot vote. Sometimes they vote illegally. We've seen cases where that's happened, but not enough to really change the outcome of anything. But the apportionment issue is a way that they can just vote by their presence and by being in those cities. And that's why the sanctuary cities try to attract them during times of when we're leading up to the next census, and then try to get rid of them shortly after that. So we saw them start to complain about the migrants just after the last census. This is why President Trump has been pushing for the census to be changed to count citizens and not count just bodies. That's what they really ought to do. So, you know, I see here Country Boy is asking that. He's been trying to do that. He's gotten a lot of pushback from that. So far, he's not been successful. But if they could do that, it would completely remove that apportionment issue. And what you'd likely see is a lot of these sanctuary cities would no longer be sanctuary cities. Now, the other reason that Democrats want more people migrating into the United States is, I'll talk about the shutdown in just a second. It is the only reason that I would say is actually somewhat legitimate. And that's the fact that Americans are just not having children at a rate fast enough to support themselves under our current system. Because the way our current system works, Social Security is kind of like a big Ponzi scheme. They have the money that you put into Social Security, that was spent a long time ago. So if you're going to collect Social Security, you're not getting a return of your own money. What you're doing is you're getting the money that's being put into the system by people who are still working and contributing to Social Security. So it's a giant Ponzi scheme because the government has hidden a whole bunch of federal long-term debt by paying for that debt out of the Social Security Trust Fund. What that means is we need more people working. We need 4 or 5 people working for every one person who's retired. Otherwise, you can imagine how costly it would be. You know, if I had to pay for 2 retired people, because there are fewer people in my generation that are contributing to Social Security, if I had to pay for 2 retired people, I'd have to pay 90 or 100% of my income or more. And it's just not feasible. It just can't work that way. The system will break down if we don't have more people paying into Social Security than we have taking out. So Democrats see this, and President Biden understood this, that if you bring in 12 or 15 million illegal migrants into our country, it's going to artificially boost the economy for a period of time. About 70% of the jobs that were filled during the Biden administration were filled by illegal immigrants. And so that is, again, just artificially boosts the economy. Once you start unwinding that, it puts a drain on the economy, and it obviously doesn't improve the lives of Americans that much, because it's not Americans who are getting the jobs, it's illegals who are getting the jobs. But at least those illegals are paying taxes in many cases. Sometimes they work under the table and they don't pay any taxes. There's a lot of that goes on, kind of the cash economy. But if they're working a regular job, they are paying taxes, payroll taxes. Their employers are paying taxes on their behalf, and that is supporting the Social Security Trust Fund. And so it is one way that the government can try to at least kick the can down the road a little ways. Okay? So JSB says, what are your thoughts on the government shutdown? Do you think it'll end soon? Yeah, I mean, I do think it'll end soon enough. The Democrats think that by shutting down the government, it's hurting the Republicans. I think if you're a Republican like me, you really could care less if the government is shut down, because they're saying, oh, they don't shut down the essential things, air traffic controllers and the military and police and stuff like that. They just shut the national parks and they shut the, stuff like that. I'm one of those people that feels like if they never reopened all the rest of government, I think we would find a way through. I think things would work out and it would be a whole lot cheaper. So every day that the government is shut down saves the U.S. taxpayer billions of dollars. And so I'm not all that upset about it. And I wonder how you feel about it. I mean, my son-in-law is a JAG officer in the U.S. military. He got paid yesterday. So, they're still getting paid. So there's that. Okay. Somebody says, with this shutdown, can Congress shut down federal money to these sanctuary cities? Well, they can do that anyway. They don't need to wait for a shutdown to do that. But yes, the answer is yes. They can. And in reality, these things are going to hurt democratic cities more than they hurt people out in the country in red states, because those people tend to have more people on government subsidies, more people working for the government. They're much more government heavy in those cities. So that means the states and the municipalities have to pick up the slack when they're not getting those federal dollars. So I think that's a great thing. Somebody's asking here, who has Sinwar's body? No, Israel has Sinwar's body, and they're not giving it back. I'm trying to go through the questions here because then I don't have to go through them at the end, and I can put them up on the screen this way. Have you heard what 4 Canadian provinces have started legislation to join the U.S.? I have heard about that. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, it's not going to happen. So I'm not too excited about it. Question: thousands of naked people on bikes Sunday in Oregon and no one arrested. Yeah, one time I went to speak at a church in Boring, Oregon, right outside of Portland. I flew into Portland, and as I was driving to Boring, all these naked people rode by on bicycles, and I was like, "What the heck?" And it was World Naked Bike Riding Day or something in Portland, and this is apparently a thing that goes on every year. These people they're just exhibitionists and love to ride around naked. Portland being a hard left-wing liberal city, if they have any ordinances against public nudity, they don't enforce them. I don't even think they have any at this point. They just don't care. In reality, all it does is gross people out, and it just proves the thing that I've been saying for a long time, that there are actually very, very few people on planet Earth that I would want to see naked. And these people are certainly not in that group. It's like the ugliest people on planet Earth decide they want to take off all their clothes. Like, why? Why subject it? We need a new Keep America Beautiful campaign with the Indian and the little tear running down his face and a bunch of naked bike riders going by in front of him. Because, yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. But does that turn people to their cause? Oh, we want to support these, protesters, and we want to be against ICE because they're riding naked in front of, doing a naked die-in in front of the ICE facility. No, I don't think that changes anybody's mind. So it's just theater, and it's really, really bad theater. Robert says, do you think the left may want more dependent voters or combatants to flip the USA to socialism? Well, if left unchecked, the Democrats would come up with a way to amnesty these people into U.S. citizens, to allow these illegal immigrants to get legal citizenship, and then they could vote, and they could, and the Democrats think if they could do that, that it would cement their majority forever. What they are forgetting is that sometimes in a situation like that, the tail may end up wagging the dog. And if the tail wags the dog, what I mean is that all these people coming in from Latin American countries are by and large, they might be more fiscally liberal, but they are very socially conservative because most of them are Catholics. So they don't like gay marriage. They don't like abortion. They don't like all these things. And if you get enough of them into the United States and they all get the ability to vote, they're going to start voting themselves money from the Treasury, voting for things like making there's something called the Aztlan movement that wants to make Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, and part of Texas into a self-governing protectorate of the United States where Spanish is the official language and they make their own laws. So you could see them voting on something like that happening, and obviously that wouldn't be cool for America. So I don't think that that would work out real well for the United States or the Democrats, either one. Love USA says it's not only about jobs and money. We need to preserve our culture also. I'm a naturalized citizen, but I don't want to change anything in the USA because this is the best country in the world. That's a nice sentiment. I appreciate the $9.99. And I certainly hear where you're coming from. We would like to preserve the things about America that we like. I don't think you can ever completely stop cultural change, especially now because the world is so, the media is so ubiquitous. And I don't mean news media per se. I mean like entertainment media is so ubiquitous that it is a driver of cultural change. And you can't really stop that. So you ever read the book, The Overton Window by Glenn Beck? It's a good book I recommend, called The Overton Window. But you know, it's just things that were considered absolutely taboo in the 1950s, like large crowds of people riding their bikes naked through the streets of Portland, are now considered normal. And they're like, you know, whatever. So the Overton window has shifted, and once it's shifted, it's very, very difficult to shift it back. Now, there is a group of people in the United States, a subculture that they're called neonatalists. And neonatalists believe that if, as Christian conservatives, if we outbreed the liberals, all we have to do is outbreed the liberals, and America will become progressively more conservative over time, because the only people having babies are Christian conservatives. Liberals typically have far fewer babies than American Christian conservatives, and so that would work only in two cases. If, number one, they stop the illegal immigration coming into the United States, and number two, they do not send their kids to public school, because public school is designed to take your kid and make him into a good little liberal, and in large part, they are effective at that. So you'd have to homeschool your kids, and many of them do, and many of them actually believe that in 25 years, America will be a more conservative place because of the ability to outbreed the liberals. And, you know, somebody asked me one time, how do you tell if something is good or evil? And I said, you know, good and evil have to do with anything that leads to life is good. Life and flourishing is good. Anything that leads to death is evil. And so if you look at the platform that the Democrats stand on politically, almost every bit of it leads to death, or at least a lack of life and flourishing. So what I mean is euthanasia. Democrats are all about that. That's death. Abortion, that's death. Gay marriage, lack of life because you can't have babies if you're gay. And you know, all of their, even the radical environmentalist stuff, they want fewer people on planet Earth, right? I've heard environmentalists say we want planet Earth to go back to having no people at all, the way it was originally meant to be. And I'm like, meant by whom? If all the people are gone, who are you talking about? And they're like, well, Mother Earth. I'm like, so you're saying God? Well, no, we don't believe in God. But, well, what are you talking about? You're anthropomorphizing a round ball of rock floating through space and saying that it has a soul and a will and emotions. You're calling it God. So if God created man and woman, why would you say that God intended for the earth to be without man and woman? It's not a logical platform, but I think people who think that way should definitely get themselves sterilized, don't have any kids, because then I'm going to have as many kids as I possibly can, and we will get rid of that toxic ideology eventually by outbreeding them. So yes, we do want to preserve our culture in America, and inviting all these illegals in certainly is going to affect our culture, and that's a problem. But all right, so next. Oh no, that's just that wasn't a question. We have B-52s between Puerto Rico and Venezuela. Yeah, I'm going to do a podcast about the ongoing strife off the shore of Venezuela and how likely it is the United States might actually conduct military operations on the ground in Venezuela very soon. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll do that one tomorrow. There's a whole lot to talk about. Let me just stop real quick and give you a quick update on what's going on in Israel. Hamas found 4 more bodies. Here's the thing. Hamas was saying we could only come up with 4 bodies of the hostages, not all 28. So the other 24, we don't know where they are. The problem with that is Israel knew where they were, where some of them were. And so they knew that at least in part, Hamas was lying. So Israel said, oh, you can't find the other 24 bodies? Well, here's where some of them are. And Israel sent them the locations of those bodies and said, yeah, we know a lot more about what's going on the ground in Gaza than you think we do. And so maybe you ought to turn those in. So Hamas was like, oh. And so they went and took those, got those 4 bodies, turned over another 4. So that makes a total of 8. That means there are still 20 hostages left unaccounted for inside Gaza. And so until they at least work that out, turn over more of those bodies, Israel has dramatically slowed the amount of aid going into Gaza, and they're refusing to open the Rafah crossing as well. Israel has still been fighting in Gaza to a very small extent. They have had to shoot several different groups of individuals, military-age males, who were approaching Israeli checkpoints far closer than they are allowed to. Israel fires warning shots. They get on a bullhorn and say, do not come any closer. Those people were still working their way closer, and so Israel shot them. There was also an exchange of indirect fire where Israel used artillery against a larger group of people that was approaching one of their checkpoints as well. So there's still a little bit of fighting going on in Israel, and Israel's going to continue to protect its soldiers as best they can. Yeah, one of the bodies that they got back was actually somebody from Gaza. So Israel's like, yeah, you're not fooling anybody. We have this thing called DNA analysis. And so really, I guess there's 21 Israeli hostages still missing. And so, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. But good for pointing that out, folks. Thank you very much. Now, folks, I want to just point out that you can go to chuckholton.com and get a lot of extra content that would, here, I'll put the link up there. chuckholton.com, we're putting up articles, summaries of each live every day. We're putting up early access videos to some of the videos that we're putting out. And we are going to be putting up my new book when it comes out. You can get, if you become a supporter at chuckholton.com, you can actually get a free download of my book, Death of Civilization, which talks a lot about this topic that we're talking about today. So I highly recommend you go do that. Also, I wanted to point out we have a new YouTube channel that's called Borderline Global Adventures. And that's just, I go to a lot of very beautiful places. I'm in Camden, Maine today. The fall foliage is incredible. It's perfect. And so I highly recommend that you go check out that new, I'm just putting up videos that are not news. It's just beautiful videos, drone videos, hiking videos, stuff like that. And you can watch all those over at my new channel there, Borderline Global Adventures. So let's take that down and we'll put that back up. I want to show you this interview with a ICE agent as he's only about 100 yards from Gavin Newsom. Check this out.
Do that, we do that ourselves. So that's what we're here today.
Hold on.
What happened?
No, we're here making Los Angeles a safer place. Since we won't have politicians that'll do that, we do that ourselves. So that's what we're here today. As you can see, already making it a safer place. We're glad to be here, not going anywhere.
And the governor's inside right there.
I don't know where he's at.
He's about 100 feet behind us. Do you have any comment from him or anything?
Again,
any message?
We're making Los Angeles and California a safer place. We're going to continue to do that, and they can take that one to the bank and cash it.
I think I saw Ben Berquam walk by in the background there. Maybe that was him. In Chicago, they've actually had these liberal pastors who are going and are confronting ICE. I got this video here of these liberal gay lesbian pro gay lesbian pastors and stuff that are going, and they're trying to get into the ICE facility, saying that we want to go in and bless the people inside and that sort of thing. They're not being allowed in. There are local delegates who are trying to get in. They're not being allowed in. This is going to continue to ramp up, folks, because the left is preparing a. Let's add this one to the stage. This is ICE as they are arresting. This is in Los Angeles, arresting more and more people. This is going to continue because, number one, ICE is not going to slow down. And number two, the left is preparing more organized riots and protests. The next one is coming up on the 18th. So in about 3 days, they're having the next No Kings protest. No Kings is a very well-funded NGO, and they're paying for protests in hundreds of cities all across the country. And so you can bet there's going to be a lot more unrest and violence. And this is what the left wants. I told you at the beginning, I wrote about this in Death of Civilization. The left wants more chaos during the Trump administration. They want to ramp up the chaos so that you'll get tired of it and you'll go, you know what, I can't handle voting for another Republican. I'm going to vote for a safe Democrat next time because I'm just tired of all this chaos. I promise you, it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. And so we need to be prepared for it. All right. So that's all I've got for today, folks. And I've got to get out of here because I'm about to miss a boat ride I'm taking with my family. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. God bless you. And we will see you next time. Take care.